Madame Web is an exciting, thrilling, high-octane superhero movie with ingenious writing, impeccable acting, game-changing CGI, some of the best action and stunt work I have seen in a long time, and all around just easily the best movie I have seen in the last 85 years. Okay, yeah, no, I was joking. Madame Web is, it's pretty bad. Welcome to Ghost or Toast, where I, ghost host, your ghost host, use my knowledge as a film major to let y'all know if a movie is ghost, which is good, or toast, which is bad. Today, the subject of our analysis is the movie Madame Web, a highly anticipated Sony Marvel movie that has a lot of D-tier Spider-Man characters in it. If you're watching this review to get an honest, comprehensive, spoiler-free analysis of how good Madame Web was, then you are in the right place. I will provide my honest and genuine thoughts on the film, and will not just go crazy criticizing everything because I'm sexist or don't like female superheroes. If you want a review that dunks on all of the bad things in this movie, you are also in the right place, because a lot of my thoughts on this film are, let's just say that they're, not good. Anyways, if you have been watching the channel long enough, you know the drill. First, I will break down the positives. Yes, I did actually have some positives for this movie, and negatives that I had with the film, before delivering my final verdict on Madame Web. So let's get right into the positives for this movie. In a movie that centers on this group of 4 girls for the majority of the runtime, the chemistry between those characters needs to be great if the audience is going to stay engaged with the story and care about the characters, and Madame Web does not fumble on this front. I thought that all the girls bounced off of each other well. Each one had unique attributes about them that made them different from one another, and the film used those differences to help make each one stand out and have some witty exchanges every now and then. The younger female leads also have good chemistry with Dakota Johnson's character Cassandra or Cassie Webb, so I don't really have too many complaints in regards to the chemistry of the film's main characters. I also thought that the story had interesting material to work with, and dare I even say, I think that if there were different writers at the helm of this project who were given the same premise for a film, that a lot of the elements in this movie could work if they were done differently or better. I know I'm kind of being vague with my statements here, but I'm trying to avoid any spoilers for the film. I do plan on making a spoiler review later, so stay tuned for that, but yeah. Notice how I said the story elements could work, not that they did work. And that's because the writers for this movie completely botched a decent concept. So now that I covered all my positives, yes, that was it, let's get into the negatives of Madame Web. Sheesh, where to even begin with this film? I think one of the worst aspects of this movie was the dialogue. It had to be. When I reviewed the trailer, I called out the acting in it for being weak, but now that I have seen the actual movie, it's not the fault of the actors and actresses. The dialogue in this movie is just overtly bad, with awkward lines and phrases, cringy attempts at references and jokes, and Attack of the Clones level of emotional dialogue. I cannot overstate how bad the writing in this movie was. Within the first 5 minutes, I had cringed several times from goofy and awkward lines, and it really is one of the weakest points in a very weak film. I would not be surprised if this was a first draft script that somehow never got revised, because the dialogue is legitimately that bad. Okay, next, I gotta mention the editing, and oh my goodness, Squidward, the editing in Madame Web is the worst I have seen in years. I cannot recall a movie in recent memory that made it more obvious that there had been extensive reshoots in dubbing. I just literally can't. It was so clearly obvious in this film. There are several times in the film where characters' lips won't line up with what they're saying, or there will be like a really weird, awkward cutaway from the character that is speaking to try to hide the fact that they are not actually saying the words that we hear. It's just ridiculously obvious, and sure, maybe I might have noticed it more because I am like a film major and tend to pick up on finer details like that, but I think that it could still be distracting even for a casual moviegoer. It was just that noticeable in the film. It's hard to miss. But obvious and distracting reshoots and weird and jarring cuts are just one part of the horrible editing of this movie. The vision sequences are also confusing and unintentionally goofy. I mentioned this in my trailer review for Madame Web, but the problem is even worse in the actual film. These vision sequences where Madame Web is looking into the future can be really disorganized and dizzying, and yeah, you could argue that that is supposed to be intentional to reflect how these visions appear disappear to Cassie. But again, it's just like I said in my trailer review, I don't think that the goofy part was supposed to be intentional. It's hard for me to really describe what I mean by goofy here. I guess a good way to put it is like you're watching the experimental music video for a friend who is a SoundCloud rapper, and they just looked up all of these wacky video and audio effects and kind of just throw them all together to make a trippy music video, but it just comes across as goofy. Another thing that you may have been curious about is the effects in this film. Did the CGI look as good as Avengers Endgame? Yeah, sorry to disappoint all of you non-existent Madame Web fans out there, but the CGI is bummy and distracting. The scenes where the bad Spider-Man guy is jumping around and flying through the air look like video game cutscenes from a game that came out 15 years ago, and surprisingly, that's not even the worst CGI here. There are these sequences where Madame Web unlocks more of her powers, and she's sort of like floating in the water and sees the past and future, and the CGI just looks extremely awful. It looks like, I don't know, Black Adam main bad guy levels of CGI, if you saw that film. I also found the references in this movie to just be annoying, cringy, and overtly blunt. Madame Web tries so hard to heavily imply the existence of important Spider-Man characters, but I guess Sony can't include them in films outside of the MCU, so they just have really awkward scenes that just heavily imply their existence. Like, two of the best examples is Cassie Webb's coworker slash friend is Ben, heavily implied to be Uncle Ben, and he says he met a girl and that they're just starting to get into a serious relationship. And Cassie asks him what her name is, and then just weirdly looks down and just doesn't speak for like 10 seconds. Or Ben's sister, whose husband is Richard, heavily implied to be Richard Parker, Peter's dad, is having a baby shower for her baby that is going to be born soon, who is implied to be Peter Parker. And they have a name guessing game to see if anyone can guess the baby's name, and right before she says the name of the baby, she gets interrupted and then it never comes back up again. It's just so cringy, dude. Please stop. Like, if you're not able to have Aunt May or Peter Parker in your movie, then just don't have them be in it. Or if you are going to reference them, don't do it in such an obvious, oafish way. We aren't all idiots. We can pick up on subtlety and subtle hints. Everything doesn't have to be an overt, my baby's name is P, and then she gets cut off. Like, the movie tries so hard to just make these unnecessary references. Like, another one, for example, is they try to reference the "with great power comes great responsibility" line, but again, it's just done so cringily. Another thing, for being a superhero movie, there's not really a lot of action in this film, and the middle, despite being far and away the best part of the movie in my opinion, was super slow and dragged on. Even at the end, they don't really have a fight against the main bad guy, Ezekiel Sims. They sort of just run away from him and cause stuff to happen to him like it's some sort of Tom and Jerry episode. If you want to see some cool fights or exciting action, Madame Web is not the movie for you. But hey, maybe you should have expected that for a movie based on a character that is like paralyzed and just sees the future for her superpower. I definitely do have a lot more thoughts on Madame Web, but I think I'll save those for a full review with spoilers, so if you want to catch that video when it drops, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit that bell. I give Madame Web a burnt toast rating of 1.5 out of 10. Not quite a 0, there were a few moments of competence in this film, but unfortunately they get drowned out in the rest of the sloppy and honestly lazy parts of the film. This movie felt lazy, like the people behind it did not really care about putting out a good product and sort of just put it out to die. If the projections for this movie are anything to go by, Madame Web will most certainly lose Sony a lot of money, and I am all here for it. We need more films like this to fail so we stop getting them. And when I say that, I am not talking about female superhero movies. I am talking about poorly written, cash grab, lazy, formulaic superhero movies that have no interest in telling a good story or are just so incompetent that they fail at telling a good one. Anyways, I've been Ghost Toast, your Ghost Toast. I hope you enjoyed my review, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a great day.